Hello, my name is Antonio Capulera, and welcome to another journey inside the mind of an artist. Tonight, the studio becomes a doorway. A canvas becomes a mirror, and every brushstroke asks a question. What makes someone unforgettable? Is it beauty? Is it talent? Is it fame? Or is it something deeper? Tonight we explore the power of presence, the courage to be different, and the light that survives change, and the magic hidden inside of the parts of ourselves the world told us to hide. So, wherever you are, slow down for a moment and step inside, and let's begin. Tonight, before the colors rise, before the brush begins to dance, before the canvas reveals what it's been waiting to become, I want to talk to you about doors. Not the kind made of wood, not the kind with lock and keys. I mean the invisible doors in life. Every human being has stood before one, a door to a new chapter, a door to healing, a door to confidence, a door to reinvention, a door to becoming more than the world once said that you could be. And the very strange thing about these doors is that many of them never open from the outside. They open from within. Some people spend years standing in front of opportunity, waiting for permission, waiting for applause, waiting for certainty, waiting for someone to tell them that they are ready. But readiness is often an illusion. Most great things begin when we are still uncertain. Most transformations begin when we are still afraid. Most beautiful paintings begin as a mess. And that is one of the great secrets of art. When you first face a blank canvas, there is nothing there to guarantee success. No promise, no map, no applause. Just space, silence, and possibility. And yet, the artist begins anyway. Why? Because something inside of them would rather risk failure than remain unopened. And that is true beyond painting, isn't it? Maybe there's a version of you that has been waiting quietly, a version of you that speaks more boldly, a version of you that forgives, a version of you that creates, a version of you that stops shrinking to fit rooms that you were never meant to be in. Perhaps that version has been knocking for years. And maybe tonight, while the colors move, while the images change, and while the rhythm of creation fills the room, you hear the knock. Life can be strange. Sometimes we think the biggest obstacle is the world outside of us. Money, time, critics, betrayal, age, and circumstance. And yes, those are real things. But often the heaviest locked door is the one inside the mind. The door labeled, "What if I fail? What if they laugh? What if I'm too late? What if I'm not enough?" Many lives grow old in front of those questions. But artists know something different. They know movement creates momentum. They know one stroke invites another. They know courage grows after action, not before it. A person does not become brave by thinking about bravery forever. They become brave by touching the handle. So tonight, I ask you gently, what door have you been standing in front of? Is it the door to a dream you buried? The door to your own voice? The door to joy after disappointment? The door to being seen as you truly are? Because it is still in front of you. It may still be meant for you. The world teaches many people to live in hallways, half committed, half expressed, half alive, always near the next room, never entering it. But you were not made for the hallway. You were made for the room beyond it. And sometimes, all it takes is a change in life, is one direction that will change an ordinary moment. Yes. One step, one brushstroke, one act of faith within yourself. Tonight, this studio is more than a room. It is a reminder that beginnings are still possible, that transformation is still available, that the canvas of your life is not finished. So as we paint, as we create, as we travel deeper into this journey together, I do not only watch these images become something new, remember, you can too. There is something mysterious about memory. Not everything we see stays with us, does it? Not every face, not every moment, not every voice. Most things pass through our lives quietly, like wind through an open field. But every once in a while, we encounter something, or someone, that lingers. And we don't always know why. It's not always the most perfect person, not always the most talented, not always the most polished or refined. In fact, sometimes it's quite the opposite. Sometimes it's the voice that trembles and speaks anyway, the face that doesn't match the standard but carries something deeper, the spirit that refuses to shrink even when the world expects it to, and somehow, those are the ones we remember. They are the ones who leave impressions not because they tried to impress, but because they allowed themselves to be seen, fully, honestly, unapologetically. That is something rare. We live in a world that often teaches people to edit themselves, to smooth out their edges, to hide their differences, to perform a version of themselves that feels acceptable. But in doing so, many lose the very thing that makes them magnetic, their presence. Presence is not something you can fake or long. It is not built on perfection. It is not built on approval. It is built on alignment. When you are who you are inside, matches what you allow the world to see. That alignment creates a kind of energy, a kind of power. And people feel it even if they cannot explain it. But you've probably experienced this, walking into a room and sensing someone without them speaking, watching someone on screen and feeling drawn to them even if you don't know why, seeing a piece of art that feels alive as if it's looking back at you. That is presence. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. And here's something important to understand. The unforgettable are not always the ones who tried the hardest to be liked. They are often the ones who stopped trying to hide. There is a freedom that comes when a person accepts themselves fully, not just the beautiful parts, but the unusual parts, the misunderstood parts, the evolving parts. And that's freedom. And that freedom is visible. It shows in the way they move, the way they speak, the way they hold silence, the way they exist without asking for permission. Artists feel this deeply because art is an extension of the self. You can always sense when something was created from fear, and you can always sense when something was created from truth. One may be technically perfect, but the other will stay with you. So if you've ever wondered why certain people, certain images, certain performances, certain moments remained in your mind long after they're gone, it's not an accident. It is presence. And the beautiful thing about presence is that it's not reserved for the chosen few. It is not something you are either born with or without. It's something you uncover when you stop hiding. So tonight, as we continue this journey, as the brushes move and the images shift, I want you to consider something quietly, honestly, and without judgment. Where in your life are you still editing yourself? Where are you holding back? Where are you softening your voice? Where are you dimming your light to make others comfortable? Because the version of you that you hide may be the very version the world would remember. And perhaps the reason some souls are unforgettable is not because they were extraordinary in the way that we taught to measure it, but because they were willing to be real in a world that often rewards pretending. There is a quiet pressure that follows many people through life. The pressure to get it right, to look right, to say the right thing, to be received the right way. Perfection becomes the goal because it feels safe. If I do everything perfectly, I won't be judged. If I present myself flawlessly, I won't be rejected. If I refine every detail, I won't be exposed. But there is something no one tells you early enough. And that's perfection does not create connection. Perfection can be admired, but it is rarely felt. And what people remember, what truly stays with them, is not perfection. It is presence. Perfection is controlled, and presence is alive. Perfection is careful, and presence is expressive. Perfection avoids mistakes, and presence transforms them. And when you look at something that is perfect, you may respect it, you may be even impressed by it. But when you experience something with presence, you feel it. It reaches you in a different space, somewhere deeper than you thought, somewhere quieter but more powerful. And that is where many artists struggle, because perfection is measurable. You can compare it, you can analyze it, you can improve it, step by step. Presence is different. Presence requires vulnerability. It asks you to show something real, something not fully controlled, something that might not be understood by everyone. And that can feel dangerous. Because when you show something real, you're also showing yourself. But here's the truth. People are not moved by what is flawless. They are moved by what is human. A slightly imperfect line drawn with conviction can carry more energy than a perfect line drawn with hesitation. A voice that cracks while speaking truth can be more powerful than a perfectly delivered performance without emotion. A painting that reveals the artist's spirit will outlive one day that technical skill. And this applies beyond art. In life, many people are waiting until they feel ready to show up fully, to speak, to create, ready to love, ready to be seen. But readiness, like perfection, can become a delay, a beautiful excuse to stay hidden. The world does not need another perfect version of something that already exists. It needs something real. It needs something lived in. It needs something shaped by experience, something touched by struggle, growth, change, or even truth. That is what creates depth. And depth is what gives presence its power. So tonight, as the brushes move, as the canvas shifts, as each image appears and disappears in motion, I want you to release something. The need to be perfect. Just for a moment. Let it go. And in its place, allow something else to emerge. Something more honest, something expressive, more alive. Because the goal is not to create something that cannot be criticized. The goal is to create something that cannot be ignored. And that only happens when you choose presence over perfection. There comes a moment in every life when we begin to understand the difference between who we are and who we have learned to be. Not all at once and not clearly, but slowly, like a reflection coming into focus. But from a young age, most of us are taught, directly or indirectly, to adapt, to adjust our behavior, to soften our edges, to become more acceptable, more agreeable, more understandable of the world around us. And at first, this seems necessary. It helps us belong and helps us to navigate and helps us to survive. But over time, something subtle can happen. The version of ourselves we present begins to drift further away from the one that we feel inside. And without even realizing it, we begin to wear a mask. Now, not all masks are bad. Some are protective, some are temporary, and some help us move through difficult seasons. But the danger is not in wearing a mask. The danger is in forgetting you're wearing one. Because when this happens, you can spend years being seen without truly being known. And there's a quiet loneliness in that. A loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from being unseen, even in a room full of people. And this is where art becomes something powerful, because art is a mirror. Not the kind that reflects your face, but the kind that reflects your truth. When you paint, when you create, when you express without filtering, you begin to see what is being hidden, the emotions you tucked away, the thoughts you silenced, the parts of themselves that you were told were too much or not enough, and that begins to surface. And sometimes That can feel uncomfortable because the mirror does not lie, but it also does not judge. It simply reveals. And in that revealing, there is an opportunity to reconnect, to remember who you were before you learned to perform, to rediscover the parts of yourself that never truly disappeared, but only waited. Many people fear this moment because taking off the mask can feel like stepping into the unknown. Questions arise. Will people still accept me? Will I still belong? Will I still be understood? But there is another question, one that is often quieter but far more important. Will I finally feel like myself? Because belonging means very little if it requires you to abandon who you are. And acceptance feels hollow if it is given to a version of you that isn't even real. The truth is, you don't need to become someone new to be worthy. You need to return to what was always there. And in that return, it will be dramatic, but sometimes it will be small. Speaking honestly when you would normally stay quiet, creating something without overthinking how it will be received, allowing yourself to feel without immediately trying to fix it. These are moments where the masks begin to loosen, where the mirror becomes clear, and where presence begins to grow, because presence is not built on performance. It is built on truth. So tonight, as the canvas continues to change, as the images move in and out, as the rhythm of creation continues, I want you to consider something gently, not with pressure and not with judgment, just with awareness. Where in your life are you still wearing a mask? And more importantly, what would it feel like to set it down for even a moment? Because behind that mask, there is something real, something unfiltered, something alive. And that is where your true presence begins. There is a moment in almost every life when being different does not feel like a gift. It feels like distance. It feels like being misunderstood. It feels like standing just outside of the circle, close to seeing it, but never quite inside of it. And in those moments, many people begin to negotiate with themselves. Maybe I should tone this down, or maybe I should act more like them, or maybe I should hide this part of me, or maybe I should become easier to accept. And little by little, something rare begins to shrink, not because it wasn't valuable, but because it wasn't immediately understood. Difference has a way of being questioned before it is being celebrated. But here's something worth holding on to. What is unfamiliar to the world is often where originality lives, and originality is the heartbeat of art. Think about it. If everything looked the same, sounded the same, moved the same, nothing would stand out. Nothing would stay with us. Nothing would feel alive. It is contrast that creates interest. It is variation that creates beauty. It is difference that creates identity. And yet, we are taught to fear it, taught to smooth it out, to make ourselves more predictable, more comfortable for others to understand. But the cost of that comfort can be the loss of something extraordinary. Because what makes you different is not random. It is specific. It is detailed. It is shaped by your experiences, your perspective, the way you see the world. No one else has that exact combination, do they? No one else can recreate it authentically. That is your signature, whether you realize it yet or not. And here's the part that many people don't realize until much later. The thing you once felt unsure about can become the very thing that defines you. The tone of your voice, the way you think, the way you express emotion, the way you interpret beauty. Even the parts of your story that felt difficult or isolating, these things carry depth. And depth is what gives art and life its weight. There are people who spend years trying to become someone else, to only realize that they were searching for what was already inside of them, waiting to be accepted, waiting to be used, waiting to be seen not as a flaw, but as strength. Now, it doesn't mean that our journey is easy. Being different can still feel uncomfortable at times, but there's still moments where you question yourself, moments where you feel out of place, moments where you wonder if it would be easier to blend in. But ease is not the same as fulfillment, and fitting in is not the same as being known. And here's the quiet power that comes when a person stops negotiating their identity, when they decide fully, clearly, without apology, this is who I am. This is how I see. And this is what I create. That decision changes something, not just in how others perceive them, but in how they move through the world. Because confidence is not about being better than others. It's about being aligned with yourself, and alignment creates presence. So tonight, as the image continues to shift, as the brush moves from one form to the other, and transformation unfolds in real time, I want you to think about something honestly. Not what the world has told you about yourself, not what others have suggested you should be, but what you know quietly, internally, to be true. What makes you different? And instead of asking whether it is acceptable, ask something else. What could this become if I embraced it fully? Because the world does not need another copy. It needs something real. And the most real thing you have to offer is the part of you that has never been repeated. There is something that we are rarely taught about beauty. We are shown the finished result, the polished image, the final version, the one that appears effortless. But we are not often shown the storm, the parts where things were uncertain, where something bent or something broke, or something had to endure more than it was expected. And yet, this is where so much of the real shaping happens, because storms do not only destroy, they reveal, they test, they stretch. They strip away what cannot hold and strengthens what can. And in doing so, they change the structure of what remains. Think about anything that has depth, anything that carries weight, presence, or meaning. It has been through something. It's not always visible on the surface, but embedded within it. And the same is true for people. There are moments in life that arrive without invitation, moments that feel overwhelming, moments that shift direction, moments that take something that you thought was stable and makes it uncertain. And in those moments, it is natural to resist, to wish things had stayed the same, to wish the storms had passed somewhere else, to wish the impact had been lighter. But storms do not ask for permission. They arrive and they move through. And when they do, something begins to change. Not always immediately and not always comfortably, but gradually. You begin to see what matters differently. You begin to understand yourself more clearly. You begin to recognize strength you did not know you had. And sometimes, what you thought would break becomes the very thing that builds you. Now, this does not mean storms are easy. It does not mean that they are welcome. It does not mean that we should seek them out. But it does mean that they are not meaningless, because within every difficult moment, there is a shaping. Something is being formed. Something is being clarified. Something is being refined. And often, it is something deeper than what existed before, like a tree that grows stronger roots after a heavy wind, like a shoreline shaped by the force of the waves, like a flower that learns to stand after bending. There is a quiet resilience that develops, and resilience is a part of beauty. Not the kind that is immediately seen, but the kind that is felt. The kind that gives presence its weight. The kind that allows a person to stand, not because nothing ever happened, but because something did, and they've remained. Artists understand this in a unique way, because creation itself is not always smooth. There are moments of doubt, moments of frustration, moments where what you see in your mind does not yet match what appears on the canvas, moments where you question the process or even yourself. But those moments are not separate from work. They are a part of it. They are shaping it. They are giving it character, texture, and depth. And without them, the world would not feel the same. And maybe life works the same way. Maybe the things that have gone through and moments and that have challenged you, confused you, stretched you, are not interruptions, but contributions. Not obstacles to your story, but elements of it. So tonight, as the painting continues to evolve, as forms appear or disappear, as movement carries us forward, I want you to consider something with honesty and patience. Not everything that felt like damage was destruction. Some of it was shaping. And what remains now may be stronger, deeper, more capable of holding light than before the storm ever came. Because beauty is not what is untouched. Sometimes it is what has endured. There is a belief that quietly limits many lives. A belief that says, this is who I am, and this is who I will always be. And it can sound stable, and it can sound grounded, and even responsible, but sometimes it is simply fear wearing the language of certainty, because life does not ask us to remain the same. It asks us to grow, doesn't it? And growth almost always requires change. Now, change can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like stepping away from something familiar, like leaving behind an identity you've carried for years, like releasing a version of yourself that once made sense but no longer fits. And that moment, that space between who you were and who you are becoming can feel uncertain, almost like standing between two worlds. Not fully the past, not fully the future, just in between. But that space is not empty. It is creative. It is where reinvention begins. Reinvention is not about pretending to be someone else. It is not about abandoning your truth. It is not about allowing your truth to fade. It is about allowing your truth to evolve, to deepen, to expand, to take new forms. Think about the way art unfolds. A painting does not begin finished. It moves through stages. There are moments where it looks unclear, moments where it seems incomplete, moments where something has to be changed, reworked, or painted over. And yet, those moments are not failures. They are part of the becoming. And the same is true for a person. There are times in life where something no longer feels aligned. A way of thinking, or a way of living, or a way of seeing yourself. And that instinct might be wanting you to hold on to it because it's familiar. But familiarity is not always truth, is it? Sometimes it's just a habit. And growth asks you to question that, to ask, is this still me? Or is this who I used to be? That question can be powerful, because answering it honestly can lead to transformation. Now, reinvention does not mean discarding everything. It means refining, keeping what is real, releasing what is no longer needed, allowing space for something new to emerge. And that process takes courage, because it means letting go of certainty. It means stepping into the unknown. It means trusting that something within you knows how to evolve. Many people resist this. They feel they must stay consistent at all cost, that changing means losing credibility, that growth means becoming unrecognizable. But the opposite is often true. Growth reveals who you are more clearly. It brings you closer to alignment, closer to presence, closer to something that feels honest. And that honesty is what people connect with. Not the version of you that never changes, but the version of you that grows with intention. There's something deeply human about transformation, about becoming, about moving through different phases of life and allowing each one to teach you something. And there's something sacred about that too, because it means you are not fixed. You are not limited to one chapter, one identity, one expression. You are something that can shift, something that can expand, something that can become more. So tonight, as the canvas continues to change, as images evolve, as colors move from one form to another, let it remind you of something simple but important. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to become something new, even if the world expects you to remain the same. Because reinvention is not a betrayal of who you were. It is a continuation of who you are. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is give yourself permission to begin again. There is something happening in every room long before anyone speaks. Something subtle, something invisible, something that cannot be measured but can absolutely be felt. And that's energy. Not the kind you plug in a wall, but the kind people carry. You felt it before, walking into a place and sensing tension without a word being said, or stepping into a space that feels warm, open, and alive even before you understand why. Rooms have energy, but they don't create energy. People do. Every person brings something with them. Their thoughts, their emotions, their level of presence, their level of awareness, and whether they realize it or not, they contribute to the atmosphere. Some people enter quickly and everything stays the same. Others enter and something shifts. Not dramatically, not loudly, but noticeably. The air feels different. The focus changes. The space becomes more alive. That is presence in motion. It is not about attention. It is not about being the loudest or the most expressive or the most dominant. It is about alignment. When someone is fully present, not distracted, not performing, not shrinking, they bring a kind of clarity to the room then. And clarity has weight. It centers everything. It grounds things. It changes the rhythm of the space. Now here's something important. You don't need a stage to have presence. You don't need a spotlight. You don't need recognition. Presence is not something that is granted by others. It is something you carry. It shows up in the way you listen, the way you speak, the way you stand, the way you create. It shows up in whether you are fully there or only partially. Many people move through life distracted, thinking about what just happened or what might be happening next, but rarely fully here with us. And when you are not fully here, your energy is divided. Your presence is diluted. But when you are present, truly present, there is a kind of stillness that forms, a focus, a sense that you are anchored in the movement, and people feel that. Even if they cannot explain it, artists understand this in a unique way. Because when you are creating, there is a moment where everything seems to fade. Time becomes less important. Noise disappears. Thoughts quiet down. And there is only the work, only the movement, only the connection between you and what you are making. That is presence. And it carries into the result. You can see it in the painting that feels alive. You can hear it in the voice that carries truth. You can sense it in the performance that holds attention without forcing it. Because presence does not demand. It invites. It draws people in, rather than pushing itself forward. And here is the part that matters for life beyond art. If you are always contributing to the energy of the spaces you enter, whether you realize it or not, the question is not if you are affecting the room, the question is how. Are you entering with distraction, with hesitation, with a need to perform? Are you entering as yourself, grounded, aware, and present? Because when you do, you don't have to try to be noticed. You don't have to force attention. The room will feel you, not because you demand it, but because you arrived. So tonight, as the paintings continue, as the movement shifts from one image to the other, as the rhythm of creation carries forward, I want you to think of something quietly. Not how others see you, but how you show up. When you walk into a space, What do you bring with you? And if the answer isn't what you want it to be yet, that's all right, because presence is not fixed. It can be developed, strengthened, refined, one moment at a time, one choice at a time, one breath at a time, until one day you don't just enter a room, you change it without saying a word. There is a common misunderstanding about confidence. Many people believe it's something you either have or you don't. Something you're born with, something reserved for certain personalities, something that belongs to the naturally bold, the naturally expressive, the naturally certain. But that is not quite true. Confidence is not a trait. It is a craft. And like any craft, it is built slowly, deliberately, and over time. Most people think confidence comes before action. Once I feel confident, I'll begin. Once I believe in myself, I'll try. Once I'm sure, I'll step forward. But in reality, it works the other way around. Confidence follows action. It grows from movement, from repetition, from showing up, even when you're unsure. Think about the first time you tried anything new. There was hesitation, awkwardness, a lack of clarity, maybe even doubt, but you did it anyway. And then you did it again and again, and somewhere along the way, something shifted. The unfamiliar became familiar. The uncertain became manageable. The difficult became possible. That shift is confidence being built, not in theory, but in practice. And this is important because many people are waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel capable, waiting to feel like they belong. But those feelings are not prerequisites. They are results. You don't wait for confidence to arrive, you create it, stroke by stroke, step by step, moment by moment. Now here's something else worth understanding. Confidence does not mean the absence of doubt. It means the ability to move forward despite it. There will always be moments of uncertainty, moments where you question yourself, moments where something doesn't go as planned, moments where the outcome is unclear. But confidence allows you to continue anyway, not because you know everything will work out perfectly, but because you trust yourself enough to handle what happens. That's trust. And that is the foundation. And trust is built through experience, through showing up, through trying, through continuing, even when things feel imperfect. Artists experience this constantly. There are days when the work flows easily, when everything feels aligned, when each stroke seems to fall in place. And then there are other days where nothing feels right, where the vision is unclear, where the hand doesn't seem to match the mind, where frustration begins to rise. But the artist continues, not because they feel confident every moment, but because they have built enough trust to keep going. And that's the difference. Confidence is not a permanent state. It is a relationship with yourself, a relationship built on evidence. Evidence that you can try, that you can adjust, that you can recover, that you can grow. So tonight, as the canvas continues to change, as images form and dissolve, as movement carries us forward, I want you to consider something honestly. Not how confident you may feel right now, but what you have been building. Because every time you show up, every time you try, every time you continue, you are adding to it, even if you don't notice it yet, even if it feels small. It is there, and over time, it becomes something steady, something reliable, something you can stand on. So you don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait to feel certain. Begin where you are. Move as you can. And let confidence meet you on the other side of action. There is a stage, whether we acknowledge it or not made of curtains and lights, not framed by an audience sitting in rows, but present in everyday life. Because every day, we step into roles. We present ourselves, we speak, we respond, and we interact. And in those moments, we are performing something, not always in a dishonest way, but in a chosen way. We choose how we show up. We choose what we reveal, what we hold back, what we emphasize, what we soften. And over time, those choices become patterns. Patterns become identity. Identity becomes presence. Now, here's where it becomes a little interesting. Many people perform unconsciously. They step into roles that they were given, roles they adapted to, roles they've never fully questioned. The agreeable one, the quiet one, the strong one, the entertainer, the one who holds everything together. And those roles can be useful. They can help navigate situations. They can provide structure, but they can also become limiting when they are no longer chosen. Because when a role becomes automatic, it can begin to replace authenticity. You start responding not as yourself, but as the version of yourself the world expects. And over time, that can be exhausting because maintaining a performance takes energy. It requires awareness, control, adjustment. And if that performance is not aligned with who you truly are, it creates tension. Now think about the theater for a moment. A great performance is not just about delivering lines. It's about presence. It's about truth within the role. It's about embodiment. The audience can tell when something is real and when something is forced. And the same applies to life. Many people not always are able to explain it, but they can feel the difference between authenticity and performance. So the question becomes, are you choosing your role or are you repeating one? Because there's a power in choosing. Power in deciding who you want to show up as. Not based on fear, not based on expectation, but based on alignment. This does not mean you abandon all roles. It means you drift the truth into them. If you are strong, let it be real strength, not pressure. If you are kind, let it be genuine, not obligation. If you are expressive, let it be honest, not performance. Because when truth enters the role, presence follows, and presence changes everything. It makes interactions feel real. It makes expression feel grounded. It makes connection feel possible. Now there's another layer to this. You are not limited to one role. Just take an actor who plays many different characters. You can evolve. You can shift. You can grow into new ways of being. But the key difference is you are not becoming someone else. You are expanding into more of yourself, allowing different aspects of who you are to have space. And that expansion is where freedom lives, because when you are no longer confined to a single version of yourself, you begin to move more naturally, more fluidly, more honestly. So tonight, as the images continue to shift, as one form transitions into another, as the rhythm of creation carries forward, I want you to reflect on something genuinely. I want you to ask yourself something very important, not with pressure, not with judgment, just with awareness. What roles have you been playing? And is it still yours? Or is it time to step into something more aligned? Because life will continue to ask you to show up, day after day, moment after moment. And each time, you have the choice. Not whether or not you are on the stage, but how you stand on it. And when you stand there as yourself, not performing but present, something shifts, not just in how others see you, but in how you experience your own life. There is a part of life that many people try to avoid, a part that feels heavy, uncertain, difficult to understand, and that's darkness. Not just the absence of light, but the emotional kind, the quiet moments, the internal struggles, the thoughts we don't always share, the experiences that leave marks even when no one else can see them. And for a long time, we are taught to resist this, to move away from it as quickly as possible, to cover it, to fix it, to replace it with something brighter, something easier, something more acceptable. But what if darkness is not something to escape? What if it is also something to understand? Because with darkness, there is depth, there is reflection, there is honesty, there is a kind of stillness that does not exist in constant light. In light, everything is visible, everything is clear, everything moves quickly. But in darkness, things slow down. You begin to feel more, to think more deeply, to notice what is usually overlooked. And while that can be uncomfortable, it can also be meaningful. Artists have always understood this. Some of the most powerful works are not created from perfect moments. They come from complexity, from contrast, from emotion that is not simple or easy to define. But art is not only about what is bright, it is about what is real. And reality includes both light and shadow, joy and struggle, clarity and confusion. Without contrast, nothing stands out. Without shadow, light has no dimension. Even in painting, depth is created through variation, through darker tones, through layers, through the parts that are not immediately illuminated. And those parts give the image its richness, its presence, its life. The same can be true for a person. The experiences that felt heavy, the moments that challenged you, the parts of yourself that you didn't fully understand, they add something. Not always in the moment, but over time. They create awareness. They create empathy. They create depth. And depth is something that cannot be faked. Now, this does not mean darkness is something to stay in forever. It is not a destination, but it is a place that can teach us. And if you allow it, if you listen to it rather than run from it, because sometimes what you find in those quiet, difficult spaces is clarity. Clarity about what matters, clarity about who you are, clarity about what needs to change and what needs to remain. And that clarity can guide you back toward light with greater understanding. So tonight, as the canvas continues to evolve, as images form through contrast, as light and shadow begin to shape what you see, I want you to consider something with honesty. Not every part of your story was easy. Not every moment was bright, but that does not mean it was without value, because even the darker chapters have contributed to who you are now, to how you see, to how you feel, to how you create. And perhaps, instead of asking how to erase those parts, you can begin to ask, what have they given me? Because darkness, when understood, can become something more than something to fear. It can become something that adds dimension, something that creates depth, something that makes the light that much more meaningful when it returns. There is a quiet fear that lives in many people, not always spoken, not always obvious, but present. The fear of being seen, not just physically, but truly seen. Seen for who you are, seen for what you feel, seen for what you create, seen without the layers, the edits, the protection. Because being seen carries risk. If people see the real you, they may not understand it, they may not accept it, they may not respond the way you had hoped. And so, many people choose safety. They reveal just enough to be included, but not enough to be exposed. They share what is comfortable, but hold back what is meaningful. They stay visible, but not fully known. And for a while, this works. It avoids conflict, it avoids vulnerability, it avoids the possibility of rejection, but it also avoids something else. Connection. Because real connection does not happen on the surface. It happens in truth, in honesty, in presence, in the willingness to let someone see beyond the outline and into the depth. And that requires courage. Not loud courage, not dramatic courage. Quiet courage. The kind that shows up in small amounts, speaking honestly when it would be easier to agree, sharing something meaningful when it would be safer to stay silent, creating something personal without knowing how it will be received. These moments may seem small, but they are powerful because each one moves you closer to being seen. Now, there is something important to understand here. Being seen does not mean being understood by everyone. It does not mean being accepted by everyone. It does not mean that that's the goal. The goal is alignment, to live in a way where what you show matches what you feel, where what you create reflects what is real. Because when those things align, something changes. You no longer feel the need to constantly adjust yourself. You no longer feel divided between who you are and who you present. You begin to feel whole. And that wholeness carries presence. It allows you to move through the world with a different kind of energy. Not because everything is certain, not because you are no longer hiding. And people feel that. They may not always articulate it, but they recognize it. Because authenticity stands out in a world where many perform. Now, there will always be moments of hesitation. Before you speak, before you create, before you reveal something real, that moment is natural. It's the space where you fear, and you must meet it with courage. And in that space, you choose. You choose whether to step forward or to step back. Neither choice defines you forever, but each one shapes your direction. So tonight, as the painting continues, as the images shift, as creation unfolds in real time, I want you to consider something honestly. Where in your life are you still holding back? Where are you visible, but not fully seen yet? And what would it look like to take the next step closer? Not everything at once, not all at once, just one step. Just one bit of courage. It does not require you to be perfect. It requires movement. And every time you allow yourself to be seen, even a little more, you are not losing safety. You are gaining something greater, a deeper connection, a stronger presence, a more honest experience of your own life. And over time, that courage builds until one day, you are no longer asking whether it's safe to be seen. You are simply being. There is an audience that follows you everywhere. Not the one outside, not the people watching, judging, supporting, or observing. Something closer, quieter, more constant. The audience within. This is the voice that speaks when everything else is silent. The one that comments, questions, evaluates, and reacts. Sometimes it encourages, sometimes it doubts, sometimes it replays moments long after they've passed. And whether you realize it or not, this inner audience shapes a great deal of your life, because before the world responds to you, you respond to yourself. Before anyone believes in what you're doing, you decide whether it's worth continuing. Before your work is seen, it is felt by you first, and that relationship matters. Many people spend their lives focused on the external audience. What will they like? Will they approve? Will they understand me? Will they accept me? But even if all those answers were positive, it wouldn't matter much if the inner voice remains unconvinced, because you carry that voice with you always. It is there when you begin something new, there when you face uncertainty, there when something doesn't go as planned. And if that voice is constantly critical, constantly doubtful, constantly questioning your worth, it becomes difficult to move forward freely. Not because the world is stopping you, but because something inside is holding you back. Now, this does not mean the inner voice should be silenced completely. It has purpose. It can help you reflect. It can help you grow. It can help you to refine. But it must be balanced, because it becomes too harsh. If it becomes too demanding, too unforgiving, it will limit you. It turns every action into a test, every attempt a risk, every expression into something that must be approved. And that is not where creativity thrives. Creativity needs space. Space to explore, to experiment, to make mistakes, and to evolve. And that space is created by how you speak about yourself. Imagine for a moment if you treated yourself the way you treat someone you truly believed in, someone you wanted to see grow, someone you respected, someone you knew had potential, even if they struggled. You wouldn't speak to them with constant criticism. You wouldn't shut them down at the first sign of imperfection. You would guide them, encourage them, allow them room to develop. What if you offered that same approach internally? What if the voice within became less of a judge and more of a partner? Because the truth is, you are always listening to yourself, and over time, what you hear becomes what you believe. So tonight, as the paintings continue to take form, as movement carries us forward, as ideas unfold in real time, I want you to become aware of something subtle. Not the loud thoughts, not the obvious reactions, but the underlying tone. How do you speak to yourself? When no one else is around. When something doesn't go perfectly, when you hesitate, when you try something new, is it supportive? Is it patient? Is it constructive? Or is it limiting? Because if you want to build presence, confidence, and authenticity, it does not begin outside. It begins in your heart, with the audience within. And the beautiful thing, that voice can change. Not overnight, not instantly, but gradually, through awareness, through intention, and through a little practice. Until one day, the voice inside is no longer something you work against, but something that moves with you, supports you, believes in you, even before the world does. And when that happens, you no longer create for approval. You create for alignment. And that is where true presence begins. There is something about time that every person must eventually come to understand. It moves, constantly, quietly, without asking any permission. And as it moves, it changes things. It changes movements. It changes circumstances. It changes people. It's not always at once, but gradually, almost unnoticeably, until one day you look back and you realize, wow, something is different. Now, one of the most visible ways time reveals itself is through the face. The face carries history. It reflects experience, emotion, growth, struggle, joy. It is not static, it evolves. And in a world that celebrates youth, celebrates sameness, celebrates the idea of staying unchanged, this evolution can feel uncomfortable because we are taught subtly and constantly that change in appearance is something to resist, something to correct, something to hide. But what if we looked at it a little differently? What if instead of seeing change as loss, we saw it as evidence? Evidence of life being lived, of time being experienced, of moments being carried forward. Because every line, every shift, every transformation tells a story that no one else has. Now, this is not only about appearance, this is about identity, because as time changes the outside, it also shapes the inside. Perspectives deepen. Understanding grows. Values shift. The way you see the world and the way you see yourself, they begin to evolve. And sometimes that evolution creates tension. You may feel like you are no longer who you once were, but not yet fully who you are becoming. And that space can feel uncertain. But it is also meaningful because it means something is happening, something is moving, something is growing. Now, there are two ways people often respond to this. Some resist it. They try to hold onto the fixed image of themselves, a past version, a moment in time they felt most certain, most comfortable, most recognized. And in doing so, they begin to disconnect from who they really are now. Others, they learn to move with it. They allow change to happen. They observe it, They adapt to it, not by losing themselves, but by understanding themselves more fully. And that understanding creates presence, because presence is not about staying the same. It is about being fully aligned with who you are in this moment. Not who you were, not who you think you should be, but who you are now. That is where authenticity lives. That is where connection becomes possible. Artists often capture this in subtle ways, in the expressions of a face, in the depth of a glaze, in the way a light and shadow interact with form. There is something powerful about seeing time, not as something to erase, but as something to honor, because it adds dimension, it adds weight, it adds truth. So tonight, as the images continue to shift, as transformation unfolds on the canvas, as differences forms and they all come and go, I want you to consider something quietly. Not with judgment, not with resistance, just with awareness. You are not the same person you once were, and that is not something to regret. It is something to recognize, because everything you have experienced, everything that you have moved through, everything you have learned has contributed to who you are now. And that version of you is not lesser. It is deeper, more aware, more formed, more real. So instead of asking how to hold on to what was, consider this. How can I fully arrive as to who I am now? Because time will continue to move. Change will continue to happen, but presence comes from meeting it, not resisting it. And when you do, you begin to carry something powerful, not the illusion of performance, but the truth of evolution. And that truth is something people can feel. There is something that cannot be taught the way technique is taught, something that cannot be copied the way style is copied, something that cannot be manufactured no matter how carefully it is constructed, and that's authenticity. And when it is present, it feels almost like a spell, not in a dramatic way, not in a loud or even obvious way, but in a quiet, undeniable way. It draws you in. You've experienced this before, watching someone speak and feeling like they mean every word, seeing a performance and sensing that it's coming from somewhere real, looking at a piece of art and feeling like it carries something beyond the surface. You may not always know how to explain it, but you recognize it, because authenticity resonates. It connects without forcing. It holds attention without demanding it. It stays with you even after the moment has passed. Now, here's the part that makes it powerful. Authenticity is not about being perfect. It is about being aligned with what you feel, aligned with what you believe, aligned with what you express. And that alignment creates a kind of clarity, a kind of honesty that does not need to be exaggerated because it is already complete. But authenticity can feel difficult because it requires something many people hesitate to offer: truth. Not just the comfortable truth, but the full truth. The parts that are clear and the parts that are still evolving, the parts that feel strong and the parts that feel uncertain. And that can feel vulnerable. Because when you are authentic, you're not hiding behind a performance. You are not standing in what is real. You are real, and it can be seen, questioned, it can be understood and misunderstood. But they can also be felt. And that is what gives authenticity its power. It creates connection, not with everyone, but with the right people, the ones who recognize it, the ones who respond to it, the ones who feel it. Thank you for joining me.